Begin the recording.
Excellent. Welcome, everyone. It is a delight to have you here with us. On behalf of the University of Pennsylvania and the Master of Applied Positive Psychology program, I want to welcome you to our virtual information session. Now, I'd like to extend a good evening if you are on the East Coast of North America like I am. But as I look around the virtual room, it may not be good evening. It might be good morning. It might be good afternoon. It might be good middle of the night. Whatever time zone you are joining us from, we are delighted to have you here. My name is Leona Brandwene. I serve as the Associate Director of Education at the Positive Psychology Center, and I and my colleague, Laura Taylor. Laura, would you be willing to introduce yourself?
Yes, hello. I'm Laura Taylor. I'm the Managing Coordinator of Education at the Positive Psychology Center. And I am located and domiciled in Philadelphia, but we are curious where you are from. So if you want to open that chat feature and let us know who you are and where you're calling in from tonight, we would love to see it.
Wonderful. Let's see where we have people coming in from. Laura, I think that the chat, is it disabled? I think that people might be posting it in the Q&A.
I'm seeing it in the Q&A. I apologize that the chat seems to be disabled at the moment. I will rectify that. Thank you for letting us know. Give us one moment and we'll be right back with you.
While you're doing that, Laura, I just want to recognize we have people who are from Canada, people from the great state of Pennsylvania, where we are, from California, from Brazil, New York City, more California, Oregon, Singapore, Taiwan, Los Angeles. I love this. It is Minnesota. I love that. Thank you. Thank you, Niels. That's a wonderful play on words. Lisbon, beautiful. Peoria, Arizona, wonderful. So as you take a look in that Q&A where it's pouring in, you can see that we are welcoming people from all over the world. Well, since we are welcoming you from all over the world, let's go ahead and let's dive in with our agenda so that we will know exactly how we're spending our time together. So this is our plan for this evening. You'll see that there are 6 different areas that we'd like to cover, starting with a positive psych overview, and then spending time diving into each of the different aspects of the program. Now, since there are a number of you who are in the room, we recognize that we are going to be challenged to get to every single question. So we're trying to make sure that we're orienting our question and answer sessions and peppering them throughout the entire session. So we will be holding a short Q&A session after each one of these segments in order to be able to pull some of your questions that are clarifying, that are for the good of the group, so that we can make sure that we are hearing what you're most interested in. Please know that if we are unable, in spite of our very best efforts, to get to your questions, you can always reach us through our program email. We'll make sure that we're communicating that by the end of today. As you're asking your questions, we'd ask you to try and make sure that they're oriented towards things that might be general, that other people might learn from too. And as you see other people that are asking questions, please feel free to use the upvote feature if it's something that you're really interested in learning about too. And that way our team, Aaron and Nicole, who you'll see in just a couple of moments, they'll be able to know which questions are going to be most important to you. So at the top of this agenda is a positive psychology overview. So I'm going to get started right there. Let's first dive in by talking about this field of positive psychology. Many of you will look at this picture and say, I think I know that gentleman. We know him too, Marty Seligman. Marty, as he's known around the Positive Psychology Center, who is one of the founding fathers of the field of positive psychology. Now, if you're here, you probably already know that positive psychology is the scientific study of strengths and virtues that enable individuals and communities to thrive, or in parlance, human flourishing, right? Now, Marty really launched the field of positive psychology back in 1998. So he was elected president of the American Psychological Association. And at that time, in his keynote address, he charged the field that psychology had been focusing very much on psychopathology, or things that go wrong in our lives. And that, by and large, had yielded really good outcomes. They were able to actually treat 9 out of the 14 top psychopathologies. There were a lot of evidence-based therapies and treatments and approaches that came out. But one of the things that Marty, as a clinician, noticed was that he could get rid of somebody's challenges, get rid of their depression, get rid of their anxiety, But when he did that, he said, I ended up with an empty person instead of a happy person. And so he began to hypothesize that happiness and well-being might be something that's above and beyond simply the absence of disease. And that's when he began to propose the field of positive psychology. So he gave that charge at the APA keynote address, and he invited people to really think about how they could study this, and also invited research dollars to follow that so that it would support that scientific study around the world. Well, what's happened since that time? There are hundreds of researchers now that study different aspects of positive psychology all around the world. The International Positive Psychology Association is in its 13th year. There is literature, there's a Journal of Positive Psychology, there's an International Journal of Well-Being. So we see academic journals that are popping up around this. We see positive psychology being applied in a number of different domains, including education, coaching, psychotherapy, and others. Since that time too, the very first master's program in positive psychology was launched, and that's the one you're here to hear about tonight. It's the Penn MAPP program, which was launched in 2005. And then I had mentioned that the International Positive Psychology Association was also founded here by faculty at Penn. So you may be thinking, what about the Positive Psychology Center? So the Positive Psychology Center also was launched. Marty started the center in 2004, and in 2005, the MAPP program arrived. But let's first talk a little bit about the Positive Psychology Center and its 3 different arms. So I'd like to emphasize that each one of these different arms really is in mutual support of the others. So obviously there's research that goes on at the Positive Psychology Center. So some of the research that has emerged related to positive psychology from the Positive Psychology Center includes the World Wellbeing Project, which is about looking at big data and how we can understand population-wide well-being. The Primals Project, which has been launched by actually a MAPP alum, as was the World Wellbeing Project actually, that looks at how our perspectives on the world might change or alter how we think about our lives and our approach to well-being. We have a Positive Humanities Project that was also launched by one of the faculty members of the MAPP program. And we have other research that's going on in transcendence. Angela Duckworth's Character Lab was born at the PPC, and others. So that strong research arm then began to be married with other arms too, and that includes application. As you may or may not realize, the Penn Resiliency Project is perhaps one of the largest applications of positive psychology at scale in the world. It's been applied in a number of different settings, including the US Army, professional sports teams, medical schools, corporations and businesses, people who have chronic illnesses and other. But the one that you're here to hear about is that arm that's over on the right-hand side, education. And we actually have 3 different things that 3 different levels of education at the Positive Psychology Center, including our MOOCs, which some of you may be familiar with, our foundation specialization that is available through Coursera. We have our Applied Positive Psychology Certificate, which is an undergraduate certificate in positive psychology that's available online. But importantly for your interest tonight, the Master of Applied Positive Psychology is where we are going to spend some time. So what about that MAPP program, and what about its faculty? Let's talk a little bit about how that program was launched, and then we'll do a deep dive into how the program is structured. Now, this gentleman, his name is James Pawelski. I had mentioned the Positive Humanities, and James actually is the founding principal investigator behind that area of study at the PPC, which is also a brand new field in studying and applying positive psychology in different disciplines. So James, back in 2004, came to the University of Pennsylvania at Marty's invitation and was asked to found a master's program in positive psychology. So at that time, the leaders at Penn had said, you know, manage your expectations. A new master's program takes a while to get its feet underneath it. It may take a little bit of time before you are actually really able to field a full class. So we will celebrate if we get somewhere around 10, 11, maybe 12 students who would apply to the program or might even come to the program. So that was the expectation they had. And in the first year of the program, you can see that 10 or 11 or 12 students was multiplied by a factor of 3 because there were a lot of people that were interested in this concept about human flourishing and positive psychology. And so the first class at Penn was born in 2005 and they graduated in 2006. You might say then, well, maybe it was just a fluke and that was not anything that was going to be able to be sustained. Well, this was our 10-year anniversary where you can see many of our classes reflected and many of the photos that we could share with you would have similar size classes. As a matter of fact, we've got our largest class ever here in MAPP 18 as we are in our 18th year. So MAPP has a very specific educational design, and my colleague Laura Taylor is going to take you through the MAPP educational design. Laura, would you be willing to take it from here?
Yes, thank you so much, Leona. I am delighted that all of you are here today. And as we dive into the educational design, I just want to say that if you have a question, we're going to use the Q&A feature. Continue to try and keep those questions for the topics that we're talking about, as we know there are many of you with wonderful questions. And so feel free to ask questions about program format as we go along, particularly anything clarifying. And I will check in with Aaron and Nicole at the end of this. Okay, let's dive right in. So MAPP is intended to provide you with extensive academic preparation in positive psychology as we look at the theories and empirical foundations of positive psychology and deeply consider ethical application. It is one calendar year of full-time study that begins each fall. MAPP is a professional master's degree that enables scholarly practitioners in areas in which they are expert. So this is importantly not a licensure or credentialing program, as the populations our students serve are by and large non-clinical populations. It is our intention that our students will be applying and helping individuals not just to flourish in a psychological context, but in any context which we find a human being. And Leona will spend some time talking about those contexts in just a few minutes. Specifically, MAPP is not intended to be a research master's. A small percentage of our students elect to do research project as a part of their capstone, and likely because they intend to go on through a PhD, but 95% of our students are really interested in becoming scholarly practitioners who want to think about how to take positive psychology out in the world. And as such, their capstone will be focused on an area of application that is unique to their hopes for improving the world. MAPP is structured as a hybrid model. What that means for us is that we have a combination of both synchronous on-site classes as well as asynchronous distance learning between each and every on-site. We value that synchronous learning community that can be created whether it is on campus or in our virtual classroom. And I see that we've already got a really wonderful question. Will fall 2023 MAPP be in person? And that is the question of the hour. Indeed, when we are able to safely connect on campus, students travel to Philadelphia for on-site classes. And currently, our on-site classes are being offered on Zoom to prioritize the health and safety of our global community, given the uneven nature of the pandemic globally. A decision for academic year 2023-2024 has not yet been made or released, but we will announce that program format decision on our website as soon as it is confirmed, likely by mid-January. So do keep an eye to our website for that update. Regardless of the decision of whether synchronous on-site classes will be held on the campus of the University of Pennsylvania or in our Zoom room, we will have our distance learning periods asynchronously supported by a virtual platform, Canvas. Now, you may be curious to know, what does that schedule of on-sites look like? And here is the fall 2023 on-site dates. Feel free to go in and mark your calendars. As you look at this, you'll notice that Immersion Week, which is the very first on-site, the 6th through the 10th of September next year, will be a Wednesday to a Sunday. But the rest of our on-sites will be weekends, Friday through Sunday, to accommodate a professional schedule. And you will find that you can have these dates not only here on the slides, but on our website by looking at courses and curriculum in the left-hand toolbar and hitting that little plus sign to choose your program format and schedule. You'll just want to scroll down a bit to be sure you're looking at the academic year 2023-2024 to see the dates that are listed here. And you may look at this and think, wow, that's awesome. I've definitely got time to manage those dates. But don't forget that between every on-site, there is a distance learning period. You will be in full-time study throughout the year. And the same thing will be true for our spring semester. So here are the dates for our spring semester. And again, with those distance learning periods in between. So let's take a little bit more time to think through how the hybrid educational design at MAPP really enhances the opportunities you have. So one wonderful advantage to this format is it doesn't require students to stop life, work, or family commitments. In fact, it permits students to continue to work full-time. You'll notice that little asterisk up there on the slide. Well, that is because full-time for us means about 40 hours a week. So if you're already engaging in 80 plus hours a week for your work, we might not invest additional time commitment for a graduate in a study, and we may not recommend that for your own well-being. So students typically are able to spend about 25 hours a week on their work in MAPP, and this varies primarily due to the reading and writing speed of the individual. Students also do not require residency in Philadelphia. In fact, most students will domicile in their own community and continue to work full-time while they pursue full-time study. Our hybrid design enables a diverse experience in the student cohort, welcoming students from across the globe, which you all answered in the chat. How amazing. We've got India, Germany, Canada, Australia. We've got Peru, Japan, Mexico, Lisbon also is coming in. And there's people right here in our backyard of Philadelphia, all the way across the United States, up and down the East Coast, Minnesota, Utah, Colorado, and California represented. So you guys are actually already starting to diversify and represent that community that we create in our classroom. So thank you so much for sharing that and knowing that this educational experience is enhanced by our student diversity because we're able to welcome students from across the globe to participate. It creates a rich discussion in the classroom from a variety of diverse perspectives, not just from our students, but our faculty as well. So let's take a minute to look at that faculty. Now, we are lucky enough to have strong standing faculty at the University of Pennsylvania in positive psychology, but as you may know many of these faces, we're going to take just a moment to say, yes, that is Dr. Seligman in the upper left-hand corner you see there, or Marty, as we affectionately call him. We have Angela Duckworth, Allison Mackey, who is our neuroscientist on the team. And of course, James Pawelski is there in the upper right. He is our director who's working on the humanities and human flourishing field that Leona mentioned earlier. Back down in the lower left, we've got David Yaden, who is a graduate of the MAPP program and now proud owner of his own PhD working on transcendent experiences and psilocybin research over at Johns Hopkins. We've got Judy Salzberg-Levick and Karen Rivich, who are those fearless leaders of the Penn Resilience program, who will also be instructors of record. And then our own Jared Clifton, who has also a newly minted PhD and doing work in primals and those undercurrent beliefs that do affect how we operate in the world. This is incredible, but we also want to welcome a variety of perspectives from other institutions, and our hybrid format allows us to do that. So this slide is going to show just a handful of those that we get to welcome into the classroom. Barry Schwartz is in the upper left, and he is in cognitive bias and decision-making. Jane Dutton there in the top center, high quality connections and organizations. Jacqueline Mattis in the red jacket is looking at identity and well-being. Sige Uwishi over in the upper right-hand corner, he is looking at what makes a psychologically rich life. If we look to the second row on the left-hand side, starting with David Cooperrider wearing that crazy little hat, having fun with our classroom, he's looking at appreciative inquiry. And what does that look like? Then we have John Paul Stevens, who is a colleague of Jane Dutton's and is continuing that work of high quality connections in organizational contexts. Barbara Fredrickson, positive emotions. Paul Bloom and John Haidt, our moral psychologists, come to the party and offer perspectives on both empathy and coddling, not to mention the pleasure of pain. And lower, we have Jane Gillum with her long hair, who has incredible work in positive education. John Rady, who's looking at physical health and well-being. Michael Boehm, who's also here at Penn, looking at mindfulness meditation. And in that lower right-hand corner, Amy Wisniewski, whose work is in job crafting. Phew! And that is just a sampling, my friends. So it's wonderful to be able to welcome such a diverse faculty into our program. But let's take a look at some of those courses that they're teaching in. So this year, in the fall of 2022, we have been offered the Introduction to Positive Psychology with our own Martin Seligman. Of course, we are constantly refining and updating our curriculum to ensure it is in alignment with the field, but we will guarantee that you will receive the best foundational education in positive psychology available. Research methods and evaluation is up next with our own Jer Clifton and David Yaden leading the charge there. Then we have the foundations of positive interventions as we really look at what are the underpinnings that happen to ensure that application goes well in the world. And Perspectives on Wellbeing is, of course, coordinated by our own Leona Brandwene on this call and welcoming a variety of guest instructors to really think about deeply what are the diverse perspectives that enable us to thrive, not just individually, but as groups and communities. All right. In the spring semester, 4 more wonderful courses come your way, including Applying Positive Interventions and Institutions, which again is coordinated by our own Leona Brandwene and incorporates a service learning project you may have heard about. Also welcomes a variety of perspectives around work and organizations that you see. Positive Psychology in Individuals is up next with Judy and Karen from our Penn Resilience program team, and they are quite the duo, very engaging. We've got Foundations of Positive, oh, excuse me, I missed one. So the Positive Education is the next course, and that is now being called, drum roll please, Psychology and the Neuroscience of Character, because we are delighted to be able to continue and to align these courses over time. And this is what we feel accurately represents the evolution of that curriculum. It's still being led by our own neuroscience, Allison Mecki, and those guest instructors. Then, last but not least in the spring semester is the Humanities of Human Flourishing with our own James Powelski, looking at how do the humanities and culture impact well-being at large. So if that doesn't get you excited, this one might. The MAPP course in the summer semester is the capstone project. It is your culminating project that enables independent integration of what you've learned throughout the year with the support of an advisor and advances the application of positive psychology in your own area of interest. So lots to be considered there across the 9 courses that are part of the curriculum. And I have been talking at you for a minute, so let's take a quick pop quiz and see if you were paying attention. Which of these statements are true? A, the University of Pennsylvania MAPP program is the first of its kind. B, the founder of positive psychology, Martin Seligman, still teaches a course in MAPP. C, one strength of the MAPP program is diversity of its faculty. D is A and C, E is all of the above. And wow, there's no full in this group. E's are pouring in. You are correct. Well done, paying attention. Thank you for that little smile as well. Let's look at one more question just to remind you of what's going on. And Leona, if you could, there we go. Which of these are true? Most students continue to work full-time while attending MAPP. You can expect to spend approximately 25 hours a week on your work in MAPP. MAPP prepares students to apply positive psychology in their domain of expertise, A and C, or all of the above. Again, very solid answers across the board. It is indeed E, all of the above. So thank you so much for paying attention. And Nicole and Aaron, I would love to take a check-in with you to see if we have potentially any clarifying questions that we may want to look at for the good of the group at this moment.
Leona and Laura and Aaron, we are getting a lot of questions that I think you're going to cover. But one at the top here is about the format of in-person classes. What's it like? What is it like to be in lecture? Do they have small groups? Are there
yes, and yes, and all of the yes. So we leave that engagement and design up to our instructional team. So it will vary from course to course, importantly. And we are mindful that anytime you're in lectures for full days during on-site synchronous learning, that it's important to remain engaged. So there will be lectures, there will be Q&As, there will be discussions. Some of them may be in smaller groups, some of them may be in larger groups. There might also be experiential assignments that pop up from time to time, or a little surprise here and there. We can't tell you what those are yet. Clearly, it wouldn't be a surprise. So there are things that will pop up throughout your experience that is intentional design to both ensure that you have acquaintance with and knowledge about. So James is always talking about positive psychology is not just something we want to know intellectually, it's something we want to experience so that we can be effective practitioners. I hope that is helpful. One more, or do we want to move on to the next section? We will be getting to a lot of student-specific questions upcoming. So with that, I think I'm going to turn it back to Leona. Thanks so much, everyone.
Fantastic. Wonderful. Well, I was noticing by all of those answers that were coming in the chat that we have a number of scholars in this room. So it's exciting to see. So you may be asking the question, what kind of students do you get in the MAPP classroom? That is an excellent question. Let's dive into that right now. So some images help to paint the picture. This is a couple of shots that we took from our classroom over the years. One of the common things that you'll see as you look across each of these faces is that there's a lot of engagement, right? One of the things that is so interesting and intense about the study of positive psychology is that the topics that we're studying are so deeply meaningful to every aspect of our lives, whether it is who we are in the workplace, who we are as individuals pursuing a passion, who we are within the context of our relationships with others, who we are as a parent or as a team member within a group. So basically, every aspect of the human experience really can be touched by some of the topics within positive psychology. And that's why you see some of these faces that are so engaged. Laura had also mentioned diversity, and there is a lot of diversity of geography. And so let's just take a look at where some of our MAPsters come from. So from an age perspective, the average age is somewhere around the mid-30s, but our youngest ever MAPster was 21 years old when they came into our classroom. Our oldest MAPster was 70 years old when they came into our classroom, and that individual actually just turned 80 and was a guest speaker at a recent event that we had. So MAPsters tend to thrive and believe in positive aging. Across the 50 states, we have had representation from every single state, I believe, in the US. And then when we begin to look around the world, you can see the list of countries that is represented here. Now, this list of countries would have been just slightly shorter last year, but we did have a number of countries that are brand new to us this year that we were excited to welcome, including Qatar, including Kazakhstan. So we're really happy that our breadth and our coverage within the MAPP program continues to grow and continues to expand. Now, this is a photo actually that one of my classmates had put together. This was at a MAPP summit that was way back, roughly around MAPP 5. And this was, she had put up a map and asked, people from our classroom to begin to identify where they were coming in from around the world. If you look on the lower right-hand side of that map, you'll see that there were 4 tags that came from Australia and New Zealand. You better imagine that for me, when I was traveling in, and I was only traveling about 4 hours to get to Philadelphia at the time, when I thought about my classmates who had to be on a plane for 22 hours in order to make it to class, it made a great deal of difference to me in terms of my motivation, because I knew that they had suffered a great deal more than me and sacrificed more to be in that classroom. In terms of our professional backgrounds that come within MAPP, that also is as diverse as you might imagine when you begin to think about different professions that might be represented. So on the health side, we've had a number of physicians that have come through the MAPP classroom. We've had other individuals that are that work in different areas related to health, including physician's assistants, physical therapists, a registered dietitian, and even an orthodontist who said that he wanted to make sure that his clients whose smiles he was fixing through orthodontia really had a genuineness behind them, because they were flourishing behind those smiles too, which was really lovely. In education, we welcome teachers, educational consultants, administrators from schools, and that ranges from children who are quite young, from kindergarten all the way up to individuals who are teaching in higher education. The business field, as you might imagine, is as diverse as the business field might be, right? And there are many different perspectives that we welcome into our classroom in business. We very much welcome coaches. There are a number of coaches and consultants that come into our classroom, but particularly we also welcome people who are already, for lack of a better term, domiciled or settled within an organization, because often they have a great deal of leverage to be able to influence well-being of their coworkers through initiatives that they can start within their own organizations. And you can see that that ranges from people who are working in what you might imagine, people working on well-being like human resources, but also CEOs and other executives. The field of law is an area that has really leapt into positive psychology. I would say back around 13 years ago when I became familiar with positive psychology, this was just in its infancy and it has really grown and exploded. I actually just had a conversation with one of our alumni. She actually works with the Utah Bar Association, and the work that they're doing to improve attorney well-being is quite striking and exciting. And then there are other different professions that are represented. Now, we had mentioned CEOs, right, in the business context, but in a nonprofit context, executive directors, right? We've had a number of individuals who have gone on to start their own nonprofits and or were already, as I mentioned, settled within a nonprofit. But you can see a wide array of different perspectives that are represented here. Religious and spiritual leaders, people from the field of sport, both athletes and performance coaches, journalists, individuals who are working in local elected government. And so you can see that there are a variety of different perspectives that help to enrich the types of conversations we have in our classroom. Within the last 5 years, we also welcome college graduates. And when I say within the last 5 years, we've welcomed them all through the ages of MAPP, but in the last 5 years, the average, as we look across and calculate over the last 5 years, approximately 25% of our students we welcome as fresh out of their undergraduate experience. So you can see we like to have a lot of fun in our classroom, whether that is in our physical campus in Philadelphia. You can see some of the interest and fun that we're having in some of those photos, to our virtual classroom too. This was actually, oh gosh, they called themselves our Sweet 16, MAPP 16. They like to characterize themselves. They had their mascot was the orange, and so they like to surprise us on occasion and show up in team uniforms and do some fun things that kept our classroom very engaged and very positive, and with a lot of play and a lot of fun. They also love to surprise us, and another class liked to surprise us by offering displays of gratitude and surprising us on occasion with just some reflections of what was on their hearts, and in a way that helped to, again, bring that sense of play to our classroom and that sense of community. I smile just looking at this photo because I can actually remember the moment. These are some other photos that are representative from our classroom. As you can see, some of our students are actually presenting. There are times where we actually turn the classroom over to our students and you become the instructors for us, because there's work that you do through the course of service learning projects and work on some of the papers that you read in neuroscience to be able to teach back to our classroom. And you can see, once again, we like to bring a lot of play and a lot of joy into our classroom. So I think that we will take a pause there and invite some questions again. So if you have some clarifying questions about what is it like to be a student within the MAPP community, we would welcome those. So Erin and Nicole, are there any questions that from the group that you'd like to share with us?
Well, we have some people curious about what do you do with a MAPP degree?
Oh, what a wonderful question. I'm actually going to hold that question because we're going to get to it just in our next section, because we're about to speak about our MAPP alumni.
Also, I don't know if you covered this, Leona. I've been busy typing away here, but someone is asking, Chloe is asking, what % are international students?
Oh, super question. Yes. So on average, when we look at it, it varies from year to year, but it ranges anywhere, I think, between over time, our running average happens to be somewhere between 20 and 30%. So we do welcome a significant international community into our classroom. And I will say it's so important, right, to have both a North American perspective as well as welcoming perspectives from all around the world. When we think about well-being, our culture and our context matter greatly. And so helping individuals in our classroom to learn from other individuals in the classroom who may have had a different experience with regard to well-being in their own culture really helps to enrich the types of conversations that we have. All right, do we have time for one more related to students, or are we ready to move on?
I think we should roll into alumni and get to that What are they doing with their
Question. What are
degrees?
they doing with their degrees? That's such a wonderful question. What do you do with a MAPP degree? Our alumni can answer that question. So you'll see some of our happy and smiling alumni reflected here as we think about what might a MAPster do. So Laura had mentioned at the start of the educational design section that we welcome individuals who are bringing a specific domain of expertise, and they're fusing that domain of expertise with what they've learned about human flourishing to bring new applications of positive psychology to the world. So our MAPP alumni actually have a MAPP website. You can see the website address down there at the bottom of the screen. Our MAPP alumni do to some extent track what they can in terms of voluntary reporting amongst their alumni. I will share with you the numbers that we are sharing here are grossly underreported because not everything that occurs in our alumni, in our larger alumni population is reflected on that website. But here's a quick summary of what we see. So we had mentioned business owners and CEOs. We've got 24 alumni represented there. That number would probably at least double and maybe triple if we started to count individuals who are executive directors or hold leadership positions in nonprofits. Many of our alumni like to write. And so we've got numerous authors of books, authors of articles, and some of those articles are articles that go on for peer review and are published in some of the academic journals that are out there. So we've got at least 20 alumni who have published at least one journal article. 79 alumni have published, at the last count, 1,100 plus. Again, these numbers are probably terribly underestimated, so they are conservative. We didn't want to overstate the affair. But then authors of books, we've got 81 alumni who have published, and many of them who have published multiple times. In addition to that, our alumni are leaders in the field of positive psychology. We are very proud that when we think about the International Positive Psychology Association, that our founding director, James Pawelski, was the founding executive director of the International Positive Psychology Association. But in addition to that, there are a number of other leadership organizations that are addressing both regional as well as domain-specific areas of positive psychology. In education, the International Positive Education Network and the Positive Education Schools Association. In Australia, that was started by our own Anne Johnstone, one of our alumni of the program. The Canadian Positive Psychology Association was co-founded by two MAPP alumni and is a thriving regional association. The Chinese Positive Psychology Association has one of my classmates who's in a leadership position with them. The Colombian Positive Psychology Association was founded by a MAPster, and the Japan Positive Psychology Association too. So there's a lot of leadership, right? The individuals who are within MAPP are interested not only in applying and increasing human flourishing, but also in sharing that knowledge more broadly so that we can continue. If you're familiar with the phrase, a rising tide raises all ships, we're hoping to create the rising tide so that we can increase flourishing all around the world. Our alumni are teaching at the university level too. Just in the MAPP program, we've got a number of alumni who are teaching at MAPP, and then we also have MAPP alumni who are teaching in other universities around the world. We try and ensure that we are sharing positive psychology on a broad level. This is an example of our capstone distribution. Many of our alumni will publish their first article actually on a website that Penn hosts called Scholarly Commons that shares the scholarly output of both researchers and students from the University of Pennsylvania with the broader world, with the intention of spreading the wealth and making sure that knowledge is shared as broadly as possible. This map that you see in front of you with all the numbers represented represents the number of downloads that you see all around the world related to different capstones that are represented in positive psychology. So you can see that the reach is quite far and the breadth is very significant. So perhaps our alumni might also be interested in giving back to the MAPP community. Each year we host a summit, which is a conference that is only for MAPP students and alumni that come back to us midway through the fall. And it provides an opportunity for them to also present some of their scholarly work to their peers in positive psychology. We welcome panel discussions. Marty hosts Q&As with the alumni through that. But we have wonderful, wonderful ways for our alumni to be able to engage. So let us perhaps take a pause there and see if there are any questions and see how well we answered that question. What can you do with a MAPP degree? Erin and Nicole, are there any questions you'd like to bring to the fore?
Maureen says, can you repeat the website that alumni publish their work on?
Yes, so it is Scholarly Commons. If you go to repository.upenn.edu. Now that repository is a collection of all the work around the University of Pennsylvania. So it's really, there's a dense number of work in there. But if you were to Google MAPP capstone or MAPP service projects in the search area on that website, it would link you to the areas where our alumni have published some of their scholarly output through capstones and through their service learning projects.
I can pop them into the chat. Oh, I see someone else already has too. There's a couple. I'll put the links in now.
Excellent, excellent. Glad to see that. And thanks for the help.
Mm.
Any other questions related to our alumni before we turn our attention to admissions?
Well,
All right.
perhaps
I think
we'll
it is
dive in
time.
then.
It is time to turn the page and speak about MAPP admissions. Here we go.
All right, so perhaps you saw yourself in one of those faces or are considering actually applying to MAPP. A few things that might be helpful to you to understand is our timeline and some requirements. So starting with the timeline, application deadline is March 1st of each year. So this year, March 1st of 2023 will be the deadline for you to submit your application. And the required materials can be seen in our application overview page on our website. But briefly, that includes a resume, essay that has 4 separate questions you will answer, also available on our website, 3 letters of recommendation, all of your transcripts. That's right, all of them. Even if you took a single course in a summer semester between your sophomore and junior years of your undergrad 20 years ago, we're still going to ask for that. So take some time and gather that together. We're also going to ask our international students or those who have transcripts from schools outside of the United States to ensure that they are evaluated so they can be meaningfully compared in the application pool. You can use either educational perspectives through Certifile that is within the application portal or World Education Services, WES, for that process. It can take time, so please do start that process early, well before the March 1st deadline. As for GREs, GREs are only required if your bachelor degree was earned later than spring of 2020 for the fall 2023 application. So if you have earned your bachelor's degree previous to that, you do not need a GRE. If it was later than spring 2020, you will need a GRE unless you have already completed a different master's program and can show that. That is the caveat there. A TOEFL or IELTS score will be required if English is not your native language. And I just want to have a special note here. We get a number of requests every year to waive the TOEFL. You are welcome to apply for a waiver, but you should know 2 things. 1, we rarely waive the TOEFL or IELTS requirement. We want to ensure everyone who is admitted into MAPP is academically successful in a fast-paced learning environment that is taught in English. 2, we are not able to review a TOEFL waiver request until your application is otherwise complete. So to avoid delays in your application review, we find it is best to go on and take the test and show us your strengths in English. Thank you so much. All admissions decisions will be released by the end of June 2023, so that you can then prepare to potentially join us in the fall. If we can go to the next slide, Leona, that would be lovely. A couple of more details you might know about your materials that might help your application process. 1, your application will be marked as complete before it enters review. So what that means is you submit an application into the online portal, but it's not considered complete until it is marked as complete within that online portal. That means someone on our admissions team has gone through and verified that everything you need in those application materials is present. You are responsible for completing your application, and you can check the status of your application online at any time, which is great news. Just log into the portal and check that status. It may be helpful to know that you can submit your application before the deadline. You do not need to wait till the 11th hour on March 1st, right before it turns into March 2nd. You can absolutely submit early, and you can submit even if you're waiting on a letter of recommendation to come through, or a transcript evaluation from WES or Certifile, or a test score for a GRE, TOEFL, or IELTS. That's just fine. The sooner you submit your application, the sooner our admissions team will be able to review it and verify it's complete. So know that that is not something you need to wait on. I see that we have a question regarding the quantitative background requirement for our application process. And I just want to highlight and say that our admissions team looks for quantitative skill in two places. One, on your transcripts, looking for 3 courses with a grade of B or better that are in math or science, quantitative reasoning, logic, etc. Or looking for quantitative use on your resume in your current role of employment. So maybe you're managing a budget, maybe you're working with evaluation data. This type of thinking is to help us ensure that you will be able to be the scholarly practitioner that we want you to be on the other side. And of course, we will be teaching you those research evaluation methods along the way as well, so that you can be an efficacious consumer of research as a graduate of the MAPP degree. All right, Leona, yes. In addition to the educational commitment and the time commitment of a graduate degree, it is also a financial commitment. So we encourage you to think about that now. Tuition and university fees are billed by semester according to your enrollment. Since all MAPP students take the same courses, 9, 4 in the fall, 4 in the spring, and 1 in the summer, costs are relatively predictable, and we encourage you to begin thinking about how you can finance your degree now. Tuition rates are broken down by semester on our website. Exact tuition rates are set each spring for the following academic year, and our website will be updated with those costs as soon as they become available. Financial aid at the graduate level is largely comprised of loan opportunities, but we do have 2 scholarships, the Christopher Peterson Memorial Fellowship and the Bei-Shan Tang Scholarship. The Christopher Peterson Memorial Fellowship requires a supplementary application alongside a completed application. The MAPP application deadline is March 1st. The CPMF deadline is March 15th for consideration. You can see those details on our website, and the Bei-Shan Tang is specifically for students who are going to be applying their work in positive education in Hong Kong. You can view that in our website as well. From previous students, we've also seen success finding funding through Fulbright and Rotary, particularly for our international students. Our veterans here in the United States have a variety of ways that they can potentially source funding and support. And there are other things you might consider, like your employer tuition benefits, nonprofits who might support your area of expertise, and more. We encourage you to be creative and to look about. Federal loans, if you live in the United States as a citizen of the United States, you can go on and start that process by completing a FAFSA online. That federal loan has the lowest available rates and will offer you $20,500 towards your graduate education. The payout will be split into the fall and spring semesters. If you find you need additional loans, you can explore the Graduate Plus loan process through the Student Registration and Financial Services Office at the University of Pennsylvania. And there are also payment plans that are available to distribute the cost of your semester bill. So some students can find these helpful. Of note, given our admissions timeline, it may be helpful to know that the deadline to enroll for the fall semester payment plan is typically the 2nd week of July. So you'll need to express interest quite quickly after being admitted if you would like to be a part of that plan. Okay, before we go into the open Q&A as our final section of today, are there any clarifying questions, Nicole and Aaron, around admission?
Well, one question, I don't know if you've gotten to it. I, like Aaron, have been
busy in the chat and the Q&A, yes.
A couple people have asked, can we speak with any alumni about their experience, or speak with any graduates during the application process?
That's an excellent question, and we're happy to do 2 things. So one, the mappalum.org website is something you can peruse. You can look at who's been writing those books. You can look at some of the scholarly commons, capstones. And if you see someone there reach out on LinkedIn. We have a really wonderful alumni community who is happy to engage with our prospective students. And if you're searching for a particular type of fit, you can reach out to us and we'll try to send you a couple of names that might be able to connect with you. I will also say that having some conversations with the alumni community can be a benefit, particularly if you're trying to figure out that point of application, but also can reading their work. So every capstone project is required to have a literature review as a part of it, which means that there are incredible references and citations available for you already in digest form on particular areas of interest that have been done by our MAPP students. So do take advantage of that resource. And I'm just noticing also some questions around the number of students who are accepted and the number of applications. We average 50 students in our MAPP classroom each year, and there are approximately 200 applications in a given year. Some years we've seen as low as 180, some years a few higher, but I'm going to give it the ballpark range of about 200 applications and about 50 students in the class. So hopefully that will help anchor you guys for that question. Anything else before we move to the final section in open Q&A?
I might address one that I've typed a couple responses to, but we don't waive the TOEFL simply for graduating from an institution where instruction was in English. So you'll still want to take the TOEFL if you are a non-native English speaker.
Very true. Thank you, Erin. Yes, we rarely waive that TOEFL or IELTS score. Please, if you're looking at a waiver process, read the details on our website to ensure you understand the process and some of the basics that do not qualify, like Erin just mentioned. If you have completed a degree in English, you would not necessarily qualify. That's not enough. All right. With that, questions that we have not yet covered will now be covered to the best of our abilities in our remaining time. Leona?
I would like to open the floor for any questions from folks. I see that Erin and Nicole, before we actually even turn to questions, I just want to acknowledge Erin and Nicole that have been working so hard to make sure that they are fielding and categorizing and theming all of the questions that have come in today. So kudos to our teammates, Erin and Nicole, for their very, very hard work. And I also want to recognize our partner from enrollment, Akila, who's here with us, who has been helping us to make sure that we are keeping the Zoom webinar running adequately. So it does take a team, right? Just as we often say, it takes a village to raise a MAPster, it takes a team to run a MAPP program. So I'm enormously grateful to them. Okay, let us open up the floor and invite some other questions or comments that you have related to the Master of Applied Positive Psychology program, and we will do our best to answer them.
So I see a question about the letters of recommendation that I'm going to just dive in and answer here, because it's asking who might be appropriate for those letters of recommendation. And there are 3 that we'll ask for. The admissions committee wants somebody who can sing your strengths, right? Who knows you well that is going to sing your praises? Don't be shy. Ask them directly if they're willing and able to write a letter in strong support of your application. If they say no, you don't want them writing your letter of recommendation anyway, trust me. But my guess is that you will have people who can do that for you. We're going to look at you through 2 lenses, both as a potential student who can handle the workload in our program as a graduate student, and as someone who'll be applying positive psychology as a practitioner afterwards. So it would be appropriate to look to an employer. It would be appropriate to look to a former teacher, professor. Perhaps there's someone you work with that mentors you, or a community volunteer organization where you have been spending good time and energy to support their particular mission and growth. So lots of ways to do it. We do want them to be professional. While we know your mom loves you, we probably don't need that to be your letter of recommendation.
Wonderful. So I'm also looking at the question list, and I would invite Nicole and
I was
Go
gonna
ahead.
hop in because I see another recommendation question about submitting more than 3. You won't be able to submit more than 3. The application system only accepts 3.
Wonderful. Other questions that we might see that people might have. Wonderful questions, people asking about all aspects of what we've covered here today.
Mhm.
Terrific. And I see
What
that.
kind of qualities that you look for to make us a strong candidate for the MAPP program? I
Oh,
think that is an excellent question.
yeah, wonderful. So I will say from our perspective, in our MAPP essay, there are some questions that we ask, and specifically we ask about what your vision is for applying positive psychology in the world. I think one of the things that characterizes all MAPSers is that they have a sense of social mission, right? They are looking to, in some way, improve the world or create more human flourishing in whatever domain of the world they happen or corner of the world in which they happen to live. So we ask you to articulate your vision in that essay, but within that, we also want to make sure that that vision is an achievable one, right? So when you graduate from the MAPP program, we want to know that our scholar practitioners are actually going out there, rolling up their sleeves and changing the world. So as you articulate your vision to us, we would also ask that you are, in addition to that, capable of executing on that vision. So if your vision is to apply positive psychology in schools, then we would hope to see some work experience that demonstrates that you have a depth of experience, a depth of education, as well as a depth of network and connections within the educational arena that would allow you to execute on that particular goal as one specific example of that. In addition to that, I would also say that we are seeking people that are going to be contributors in our classroom. Our classroom is quite collaborative in nature, and we deliberately cultivate within our classroom a very cooperative and collaborative environment. And so rather than having students compete with one another, I had used the phrase that a rising tide raises all ships. We also want that, I could also frame that from the perspective that are, starting up on a particular learning curve and bringing people along with you helps everybody's learning within the classroom. So we're really looking to enrich the classroom experience, not just from the perspective of what our faculty deliver to our classroom, but also what the students who come into our classroom are also contributing and enriching through some of the critical questions that they ask, some of the new ideas that they bring into our classroom. So we're definitely looking for people who are high in what I would call strengths of head, right? That you can handle the academic work that's associated with MAPP, that you can actually execute on plans and goals that you have in place related to positive psychology, but also high in strengths of heart. So not only contributors and givers within our classroom, but contributors and givers within the greater world.
That's so wonderful, Leona. And I just want to add too, there's a question here about oh, it just maybe went away, but it was asking if you need to have an undergraduate degree in psychology essentially to apply to MAPP, and the answer is no. The application of positive psychology can happen in so many ways, in the ways that Leona has described. So please know that your expertise and background will be valued, and what we're looking for is how you would apply positive psychology within that domain. So not necessary. Thanks for asking.
Yes, you have two examples right in front of you, and Laura and I, since we're both alumni of the program, and neither of us, I think, had our undergraduate in psychology. So, Laura, I am looking at the time, and I want to make sure that we're being respectful of people's time. So I'm going to pop this up on the screen just so that people know where to turn for more information. So particularly that website, penpositivepsych.org, that actually includes all of the educational programs that we offer through the Positive Psychology Center, starting with our MOOCs and our foundations courses through Coursera, our applied positive psychology classes that are offered through the Bachelor of Applied Arts and Sciences within the College of Liberal and Professional Studies, and then the Master of Applied Positive Psychology program. So you can look across them, compare and contrast them, and really understand how each of those fulfills a different need for a different type of learner. As Laura had mentioned earlier, we are going to be accepting applications for fall 2023, and that application deadline will be March 1st of 2023. Many of you may have had some very particular questions that are specific to your unique situation or specific needs. We encourage you to use that email address that you see there, map-info@sas.upenn.edu, and to please do reach out to us. As you are sitting here and listening to all of this, I hope that this not only painted a picture for you of what the Master of Applied Positive Psychology program looks like, but perhaps you might have seen yourself potentially in our classroom, which is probably an exciting feeling. If you feel as though you're galvanized and really want to think about bringing up your own knowledge and skills related to positive psychology and how you apply them in the world, we invite your application. We welcome people that are bringing diverse perspectives, that bring diverse geographies to us, diverse life experiences. It really helps to enrich our classroom. So perhaps you might be the next person who's sitting in the MAPP classroom and somebody else might be seeing your photo up on one of these slides in the future. We are so grateful that you joined us here today. It was a joy to share the space with you, and we hope to see your application in the future. I especially, again, want to extend my gratitude to my team. I would encourage you, if you can, I know it'll be quiet, but to offer them some applause and a little bit of thanks perhaps in the chat, because they've been working very hard on your behalf in order to support you and make sure that your questions have been answered. Laura, is there anything else that you would like to add before we close out for the evening?
No, just thank you so much for taking the time to spend an hour with us today and learn more about the MAPP program. We hope we've answered most of your questions, but again, do reach out if there are remaining questions. We do want to be of support in the process, and that information is there. Thanks so much, everyone.
Absolutely. Okay, last couple of seconds, grab a screenshot of that screen if you need to have the information. I'll leave it up there for about 10 more seconds, and then we'll pull it down so that we can wave goodbye as everybody is dropping off of the call. All right, I'm going to go ahead and pull that down. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for joining us here today. It was a pleasure to have you all with us.
And with that, I would invite us to pause the recording. Nikila, if you could help us out with that.